2023. It's the 34th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, which happened on June 4th, 1989, where the Communist Party of China used their soldiers to crack down on peaceful student protests. So today we're here at New York Times Square, and we're gonna go around and interview some people about what they know about the Tiananmen Square massacre and if they have anything to say about it after 34 years. We tried to do the interview 4 years ago on Tiananmen Square in Beijing, and we were immediately arrested by the police and put in jail. And we're also going to ask the people today whether they can guess what punishment they would receive if they did that in Tiananmen Square. Do you know what date it is today?
The date? I think the 3rd of June? 4th of June, I think.
Yeah, so do you know what happened in China in June 4th, 1989?
1989?
Yep. Is the protest like on square? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Right, the Tiananmen Square protest, right? Have you heard about the Tiananmen Square massacre?
请问您来自哪里？
我来自湖北武汉。
您知道34年前的今天在北京的天安门发生了什么事情吗？
我大概知道，但是你可能得提醒我一下。
So can you tell us something you know about the Tiananmen massacre?
Yeah, so essentially I think it has to do with the social activity that was happening in 1989 in Tiananmen, Beijing, where the government ran like mercilessly with the tanks over the students.
Do you know what happened in Tiananmen Square 34 years ago?
Oh, I've read up a little about it, but probably not that much.
Where have you read it from?
Just Wikipedia.
Do you know what date it is today?
Today is, oh my god, it's Tiananmen Square.
Have you ever heard about the Tiananmen Square protest?
Yes, the one with the, okay, yeah.
Yeah, tell me what you know about it.
I saw pictures and videos, lots of boys and girls revolting, protesting for liberty, for culture, for being Wu.
So essentially there was a massive protest on Tiananmen Square for the democratization of China. Eventually ended up in a military quashing of the protest. It was a bloodshed.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how many people died, but a lot of people died. But we are not exactly sure how many people because the officials won't release the exact figures.
If I was doing this interview right now in Beijing, like, what do you think my punishment would be? If they catch me, like, what do you think?
Like asking 5 years in jail.
That's a good guess.
Maybe, I think a couple of years in jail for a year.
So what do you think my punishment would be if I do this in China?
I mean,
Take a guess. Well, yeah, just take a guess.
they like lock you up in the prison for like maybe 15 days.
How much time do we need? Will we stay in jail if this conversation has happened in China?
I don't know, but I know I can see that it's not a democratic government. Maybe not say 5 years.
比如说我们现在这个采访发生在北京，你觉得我们会被政府怎么样的对待，或者就是有什么事情会发生在我们身上？可以猜一下吗？
我不知道，我不做这种猜测，好吗？
Assuming this conversation happens in China, what kind of penalties would each of us get? Can you guess?
I'm assuming the death penalty.
Let's say if I was doing this interview right now in Beijing, what do you think would happen to me?
Not good things, I suppose.
Wanna take a guess?
But I hope to see you alive and well.
And take a guess, what do you think will happen?
Probably arrested by police.
And how long do you think I would go to the jail for?
I hope a small time, but I don't know.
Take your guess, like
2 weeks.
let's say if I was doing this interview with you right now in Beijing, what do you think would happen to me?
Oh, asking us about Tiananmen Square?
Yeah, if I'm in Beijing right now asking in a Chinese perspective, foreigners about Tiananmen Square, what do you think would happen to them?
I don't think anything good. I don't know, but I think there's so much surveillance that it would stick with you for a long time. I don't know if somebody would like immediately come and swipe you off and take you away, but like it would be noted.
Right.
Permanent record.
Take a guess, like something specific. What do you think could happen?
I don't know.
What do you
Or you go to prison.
My friends here actually tried to do this in China 4
Yeah.
years ago,
Okay.
and they were basically immediately apprehended.
Yeah?
And so they didn't actually succeed in doing this kind of interview. So that's why we are trying to replicate
Okay.
this kind of interviews here in the United States. They were jailed for 7 months.
7 months?
Close to a year.
Okay.
But the maximum sentence would be 10 years. There are legislations or regulations in the United States that force Chinese corporations to comply with certain human rights standards if they want to do business here.
I know that, yeah.
Would you support this kind of laws or regulations in your own country, in Mexico?
I don't really know, to be honest.
You don't know?
Yeah. I'm not sure about that. I think that, well, I can notice that China and the United States are like front countries.
Yeah.
And I know, I think that they both are trying to be more, I don't know how to say that, what?
Confrontational?
Something like that.
It's a complicated question. Probably China wouldn't like that because it's kind of like inner affairs. And when a few years ago the Uyghurs problem, in China, I mean, America tried to say something about it, but Chinese government said it's like inner affairs. You cannot interfere with that. So probably it will be hard for America to do that. I mean, for like the public and like non-profit organizations, they can push for that, and kind of like companies that want to show their support, they can just like do that. But I'm against the like legislation.
I believe there might be some for if your like headquarter or if your company is registered in the States, but I don't know if there's one. I don't think there is one that is particularly like this matter in Taiwan. And for China, I don't know.
I'm gonna see. Would you support this kind of legislation if they ask the Chinese companies to submit reviews of the human rights violations? Or?
Yeah, I'm of course I totally agree with this, but I'm doing this in like a progressive way, not like aggressively. Say, I have to go on streets and protest in front of the China ambassador in New York. That's not what I'm gonna do.
I mean, would you support this kind of legislation?
Yeah, I think because I grew up being here in Canada, we're very strong about supporting like human rights and like the freedom of speech. So I think it's definitely good to filter out the corporations that aren't like
Would you support such legislations that pose the responsibilities on U.S. corporations?
I'm not sure about posing these regulations, because I feel like they wouldn't be like the U.S. corporations wouldn't follow them. I feel like they're very loosely followed, especially because they have so much power in the States. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, really reasonable perspective.
3 years ago, a lot of U.S. companies were exposed to have ties with Chinese companies using Uyghur forced labor in China, and then because once that was exposed, they cut their ties. So do you think like things like that is important for companies to respect human rights in say like China or in other countries in the world?
Well, I suppose that for a lot of countries it's not a priority. So
Why do you think so?
Business,
Yeah.
make more money, because if you, use people and they work, it's better for their job.
Right. And do you think like the public or the laws and regulations would have an effect on it? Like, do you think we could make those companies, like, do better by giving them pressure?
Yes.
So would you like support that kind of legislation if they were?
Yeah, I'm Italian, so I don't know what I can do, but in Italy there's a terrible situation right now about Italian as well, because they're raising on fascism again. So it's not the best historical time for human rights, and but I hope that we'll be better in the future.
I don't think that. I mean, money talks loudly everywhere. Here, there, and therefore, that's.
I feel like
you have
Chinese
human
government
rights.
is
You have
less...
human rights until Apple wants to make their phones. It's as simple as that. And
I don't know. I feel like the Chinese government is feels like they control the businesses.
Yeah, but they don't. But our business is the world's business. They just want the money, and now they kind of look at they hope India is going to be the next China. India's not going to be the same consumer society as China is for a long time.
Say if like a legislation that forces U.S. companies in cooperation with Chinese companies to review the human rights violations in China by the Chinese company, or say for like Chinese companies doing business here to submit like evidence that they're not doing human rights violations. Would you support that kind of legislation, or do you think like the public opinion could help in that sense?
Well, I think it's complicated again. Public opinion wants a phone, made in China. I mean, I'm old and cynical, but public opinion just goes so far. It's the same here. You want to increase the hourly wage, and all of a sudden, oh no, my hamburger is going to be more expensive. It doesn't matter that you have child labor here, right? Immigrants who are coming. So I don't. Money talks. It seems to be today. The only thing that talks is money.
政府动用了怎样的手段对学生进行了什么样的镇压，是不是进行了镇压，这些东西我都不知道。你现在要我突然让我对这个事情做个评论，我实在不好说。
对，所以我总结一下您的意见，就是您认为中国政府当前在与这个中国人民沟通方面，或者说在放宽言论自由方面，它其实还是有进步的空间的，是吗？
So yeah, you said you have a lot of Chinese friends at your boarding school. Do you ever talk to them about politics?
Yeah, there's one friend that we talked about the Chinese government, and I think he mentioned once the protests in the Tiananmen Square, and so yeah.
How old is your friend?
He's 18 years old. He's a senior. He graduated.
Yeah, do you know it's crazy? So in China, when we got arrested, the cops were so surprised. Because China tried to wipe out the entire thing from its history, and they were so surprised that young people like us still know about it and care about it. So, do you think like your friend knows about the Tiananmen?
Yeah, he knows about
Yeah, and what does he think about it?
Yeah, he's against the Chinese really hard crackdown on the citizens. He's more for a democratic and liberal approach.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, so what about your other Chinese friends? Do you think they have similar views or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, many of them studied in the US for a long time, and some of them went to international schools in China. So and feel like the curriculum is a little bit different from government schools.
Right. I have no idea. German and Swiss I don't know if Swiss politicians, but German politicians don't criticize China in general because China is a very important partner when it comes to all kinds of important products. So.
The U.S., being a democratic and country with elected government officials, would you support, say, if a political candidate raises their voice about what's going on in China and like propose a legislation that calls for tighter regulation on Chinese companies doing business here.
Sure, yes. But it's gonna but it will. That person can say what they want while they're running, but they're talking about what's more important to their constituents. And I think that with the tensions and who wants to rock the boat, I suppose. I don't know. But but human rights legislation, we have failed. We've just failed. We've tried. Tell me one that's worked worldwide. And let's not talk about South Africa. They were figuring out their problems way before we boycotted anything. We arrived, at the end with so I don't know that has it worked? I don't know.
Yeah,